Let me tell you about my top 5 most frequent or significant delusions. 1. Being pregnant, specifically with the Antichrist. Now, I often believed I was pregnant and sometimes even with human babies, but what was really stressful was believing that I was pregnant with the Antichrist. See, the thing about delusions is that even if you provide solid proof that disproves the delusion, a person in a delusion won't buy it. So I am a great example of that because when I believed I was pregnant with the Antichrist, I went out and I got a pregnancy test. And when it came back negative, this did not stop the delusion at all. Instead, it morphed into me thinking that Satan is just so cunning and clever that he would not allow his spawn to show up on a pregnancy test. So I just kept believing. 2. Believing that I am a God or Jesus Christ. This one is rather burdensome because with great power comes great responsibility, and I did not want that responsibility. I believed that I had been chosen to save the world, and I really just wanted to be left alone. I would often say, hey, just let a chill guy be a chill guy, because it was very draining to have to expend that much energy saving other people when all I really wanted to do was hang out at home and watch TV. So I didn't like being a god. It's not all it's cracked up to be. 3. Believing that I'm in outer space. I think there's a common theme with my delusions where there's an immense pressure and responsibility involved that I did not sign up for, and this is a great example of that. I believed that I was on a spaceship that was headed for Mars, and upon arriving on Mars, we were going to colonize the planet and repopulate it. However, I was the only woman on board the spaceship, and it was my sole responsibility to bear all the children that would repopulate Mars. And I did not sign up for this. I did not know this was going to happen until I was on the spaceship. And I just remember firmly shouting, I did not consent to this, like over and over and over again. It was a horrible experience. 4 is the uncanny valley effect, where I believed that everyone was either an alien or an android, and I was the only human left on Earth. It is a very lonely feeling to feel like you're the only person left alive on the entire planet surrounded by these imposters, and I was crushed, and I felt like they were all in cahoots on this secret plan to take me out so they could completely take over, and I was just the last one left for them to kill. And yeah, I felt like constantly on edge, constantly scared that everyone around me had this big plan that they were keeping from me, even though I was catching on to it. And 5 is the Truman Show delusion. It is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It was the belief that I was on some sort of a reality TV show or a hidden camera show, and everyone was in on it but me. So I was constantly confused, trying to act off of their actions and try to figure out what they wanted from me. So I'd always be looking around, trying to find the hidden cameras, and then just sort of mirroring what the other people around me were doing. So those are my top 5 delusions, and if you have any other interesting ones, or if you can relate to the ones I've had, I'd love to hear about it in the comments, so let me know.
When I was in college, I took sociology, and at the beginning of the course, our professor was explaining to the class what a social construct is. And essentially, it's a concept that doesn't exist in objective reality, and it's formed as a result of human interaction. So it's agreed upon by humans, and that's why it exists. As an example, she explained that time is a construct, and this was really hard for me to understand because as humans, we age. There is evidence physically that time has an effect on our bodies, and we revolve around the sun. Our planet revolves around the sun, and days go by. I couldn't understand the difference between the passage of, revolutions versus numbered hours and increments of time. That was beyond me. But you know what? As a person with schizoaffective disorder who has been psychotic multiple times, I have to say that after experiencing psychosis, I get it. I totally get how time can be a construct. You see, the mechanics of time don't operate the same way in psychosis. At least for me, they don't. And I will give you 3 examples of how in psychosis, time doesn't exist. The first example is fairly simple because it's kind of like imaginary. I used to think that I was in control of time and I could control day and night. So to do that, I would flip a switch. Like if I were in a room and there was a light source, if I flipped the switch off and the lights turned off, it was night. And if I flipped it on, it was day. So in my mind, I controlled day and night, and therefore I could make time move as quickly as possible or as slowly as possible. And in the hospital, I was constantly being told to stop flickering the lights because I was going back and forth between day, night, day, night, day, night, just constantly. So in that state, I had no concept of what actual time was because I literally could not distinguish day from night. Then there's losing time, which is where you lose your awareness of how much time has passed, of what time of day it is. And in this case, you may be able to tell by how dark it is outside that it's nighttime, but you won't realize the time has passed in the time between when the sun was up and when it was down. So what could feel like minutes would be hours, and I would just have no concept of what it felt like to experience time. And, hours would go by, and if I were, say, catatonic, it would just happen. It would pass me by because I would be locked in on myself and I wouldn't be engaged with reality to begin with, so I didn't notice time. And finally, possibly the hardest to convey is the feeling of infinity, because there would be times in psychosis where I felt as if I was in an eternal moment, and there was both the absence of time and no end of time in one feeling. So I could feel that I had always been and I never was, and I didn't exist and I existed all at the same time. There were these dualities, but they were balanced so that I was merely a fragment. I was just a wisp, and I was locked in this vacuum of none amount of time and full-on endless time at the same time. Infinity is really weird because it really does feel like you're in a vacuum where there is no such thing as time. And I wish I could make it easier to understand. I hope that somehow translates, but the feeling of infinity is an absence, and it is very much like an inability to conceptualize the concept of time. It's as if it were a dimension, say if it were the 3rd dimension, if time were the 3rd dimension, I'm operating on the 2nd dimension. So I am not even in that dimension. So yeah, time is a construct. It's absolutely a construct. And in psychosis, it's really easy to be completely skewed and to have literally no concept of time, to not know what time is, to not know that time is happening. And I think that having been through that myself, I actually am a lot better at keeping track of time now because it's structured. The way that the social construct of time is established is so much easier to navigate than the concept of time in psychosis.